So I just want to say to everybody that welcome Michael Neal. Thank you so much for joining us today. Michael graciously offered to join us and wrap up our resiliency track. And if you don't know Michael Neal, you should, really. He's written several books, Inside Out Revolution and The Space Within. He also is a world traveling through principles coach. I mean, if you want to call him that. And he, that's very dark. And he was my first teacher. So we were talking yesterday about what people were curious, like, how did you find the principles? Well, I was one of Michael's early experiments. So, so Michael, thank you so much for joining us. We're so grateful that you're here today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm sorry I can't be there with you guys. I'm in London. I actually have a group, a bunch of whom are lurking just off camera. And part of why they're lurking is because they contributed to the conversation we're about to have. We've actually just thought it would be an interesting conversation to have in this group to talk about resilience before I talked with you guys about it. And what I'd like to do is I'm gonna talk at you for a little bit. So I'm gonna share some things that I've seen about resilience, that I see about resilience, that I'm hoping will prove to be relevant for you, but also almost like connecting the dots with some of the things that you guys have been talking about over the last 3 days. I am gonna try to do Q&A. So if that works, fantastic. If it doesn't, I'll talk more. But then before we finish, I am going to stop the Q&A a few minutes before our time so that I can share one last piece with you. My favorite metaphor for resilience is from it's from a book called Made to Bounce. And there's actually a couple of books called Made to Bounce, and I can't remember right now the author of this one. And he talks about the difference between a Christmas ornament, an orange, and a rubber ball. So a Christmas ornament is beautiful, but they're pretty fragile. So I don't know about you, and maybe you don't celebrate Christmas, but every year we take out the Christmas ornaments, and every year there are a few less, because it doesn't take much for them to shatter. Even though they look quite substantial, they're usually made of glass. They're quite fragile. And for a lot of people, the way they see themselves, the way they understand the human condition is life is beautiful but fragile. Love is beautiful but fragile. Well-being is beautiful but fragile. Health, beautiful but fragile. It's all one big Christmas ornament. It's great till it breaks. It's great till somebody pushes too hard. It's great till it falls from the tree. Now, another way that people see the human condition, that they see themselves, is as an orange. Now, an orange has a tough skin, right? You can hurl an orange against a wall repeatedly, and it won't look like anything's happened. It'll be bruised like hell on the inside. But the outside will look fine for a long time. And a lot of us feel that way at various times in our life. We feel like an orange, like yeah, we're doing fine. Yeah, I'm fine. How you doing? Fine. How you dealing with it? Fine. Right? But inside, the juices have begun to seep out a bit, and it's begun to rot from the inside out. And that's how a lot of us see ourselves. We're maintaining a good facade. We're putting up a good front, while inside we're slowly dying. Well, a rubber ball is made to bounce. It's no different on the 1,000th bounce than the first. It is no less itself, no matter what it goes through. It can be hit repeatedly with a baseball bat, and it's still as good as new. And that, for me, in my own journey, was one of the big things that I started to see, is that it was possible for resilience not just to be about getting a thicker skin, getting tougher, right? I used to have over my desk a quote from Jim Rohn: "Don't wish it was easier, wish you were tougher." That's what resilience meant to me. Cowboy up, man up, you can do this. Don't be a wimp. Life's tough, be tougher. Well, I've never talked to a rubber ball, but I don't think rubber balls think that way. Right? I think they just bounce. It's what we do. You don't have to worry about, oh my gosh, I'm going to fall, whee, and I'm back. Right? That's us. That's the human condition. We're made to bounce. We're no less on the 1,000th bounce than on the first. Now, for me, when I was thinking about, because we were talking in the group, well, do you think I should share my story? You guys have heard Mahima's story. You've heard Jeanne's story. You've heard all these amazing stories, Jacqueline's stories of the prisons. Do you need one more? Well, the reason I want to share a little bit of mine isn't to join the, life's hard for me too brigade. It's because what I saw about resilience wasn't what I expected to see. So for me, I went through the worst of my life early, relatively early, right? The worst years of my life experientially were sort of 13 to 19, 20, right? That was when the depression was at its worst and I was least capable of dealing with it. That's when the suicidal thoughts were at their loudest and I had the least perspective on them. And then I kind of learned to cope. I kind of learned to handle it, to deal with it, to get a thicker skin on my orange, to not let it show, to toughen up, to work on myself, right? To get massages between rounds of the fight. And when I was first exposed to the principles, to the conversation you guys have been in for the last few days, I thought it sounded neat. Oh, that's a nice model. That sounds nice. I'll use some of that in my teaching. And then I heard Sid Banks talk for the first time, and didn't know who he was, didn't care, wasn't really interested. But I was doing an intensive with someone, and they wanted me to listen to Sid Banks. So sure, I'll listen to Sid Banks. There was a Mariners game on, a Mariners Giants game. I was going to watch that, but I thought I'd better listen to Sid Banks first on the DVD, and then I could watch the baseball. I was a couple beers in, I was having a room service meal, and the Scottish guy is saying, I don't remember a lot of what he was saying, but I heard one bit, right? I heard, by the way, this hasn't changed. The kids, because I'll play Sid Banks videos for my clients at home, and the kids will occasionally give me a phone message when I'm done with sessions or ask me a question, and I'll go, oh, why didn't you come down earlier? And they said, oh, we did, but you and your client were sleeping while that Scottish guy was talking. Well, the thing I remember, the bit I was awake for the first time, was he said, every human being is sitting in the middle of mental health. They just don't know it. And I don't know why I heard that as deeply as I heard it, but I did. It wasn't like, oh, there's an interesting idea. It wasn't like, oh, that's not how I've seen it. There was no inner debate in me. I just saw it was true. It was though he'd said, the emperor is not wearing any clothes. And I went, holy crap, you're right. Now, this was disturbing to me. This was distressing to me, although you might not have known it to look at me, because what happened was I burst out laughing, beer came out my nose, and I was just hysterical for about 10 minutes. Because what happened was, as best I understand it, is about 30 years worth of suffering fell away in 10 minutes. And suddenly I was not a bruised orange in need of a thicker skin. Suddenly I was a rubber ball fresh out of the bin, fresh out of the basket. I was an orange fresh off the tree. I was a Christmas ornament as good as new. So for me, resilience showed up not in bouncing back or making it through or toughing it out or coming out the other side. For me, it came in seeing literally for the first time in my entire life that I had never been broken. I just thought I'd been. That I didn't need fixing, I just thought I did. That I didn't need to be careful with me because people don't understand how fragile I am. That you could throw me against 1,000 walls and I would bounce back 1,001 without any effort on my part. It wasn't personal, right? It's not like some rubber balls are tougher than others. It's just the nature of rubber balls. And for me, to see that was life-changing, genuinely, because there was nothing to be scared of anymore. What if I fall? You'll bounce back. What if I break? You can't. What if I feel like I'm broken? You'll feel like you're broken until you realize you're not. And it changed the way I did everything. And it changed the way I looked at the world, because the world didn't look so dangerous if I'm not breakable. Right? Like, I don't really know what superheroes think, but I suspect that, like, after his third or fourth gunfight, right, after the fourth or fifth time that Wonder Woman realized that she can deflect the bullets and Superman realized the bullets would bounce off him, he wasn't really afraid of a gunfight anymore. So rather than seeing my resilience making me less interested in the suffering of the world, it made me far more willing to wade into the middle of suffering wherever it was and see what I could do to help. Because I had immunity. I'm about to share a stupid analogy. Bear with me. My wife and I are watching Outlander at the moment. Anyone watch Outlander? I can't see you. I'm going to assume somebody's watched Outlander, right? So Outlander, this woman goes back in time to ancient Scotland, and she's hooking up with this hot redheaded Scottish guy, and the sex scenes are great. But there is a plot, sort of, and part of the plot is that her growing up in the 20th century, she has been vaccinated for smallpox, which is, at the time that she goes back to, I think it's 18th century Scotland, the scourge. Now, what it means is she can walk into any hospital, into any battlefield, unafraid of being infected by the smallpox. That's what this understanding does for us. It lets us walk into situations that other people, maybe even we, think are incredibly difficult. It lets us walk towards the trouble, not hide ourselves from it. Because we know that nothing real in us can be damaged. Nothing real in us can be hurt. Whatever we go through, we will come back as good as new. And when we start to see that in others, we stop seeing them as broken and needing us to come fix them. I had a conversation with a student once, and he got very upset with me for talking about resilience in this way, and talking about how you could just be as good as new. And I remember him saying, he said, well, that's all well and good talking about resilience and innate health and the mind. He said, but if somebody has a broken leg in front of me, I'm going to help them set the bone. I'm not going to talk to them about their innate resilience. And I said, well, if I knew how to set a bone, I would too. I said, but I can tell you this. Since I've seen to be true what I've seen to be true about human beings, there's a lot less people with broken legs than I used to think. And that's sort of not quite where I'm going to leave you, because I'm going to take questions and then I'm going to share one more story. But that's something that I just wanted to, I just thought, look, as long as you've invited me in, that's what I want to share. You're not broken. In fact, you're not breakable. But neither is anybody else. And appearances can be deceiving. I used to do an exercise where I would take a $100 bill and I'd hold it up in front of an audience and I go, who wants it? And everybody would go, me, except for the 3 people who were just so suspicious. They knew it was a trick, so like, no. And then I would spit on it. I'd crumple it up. I'd stick it under my shoe. I'd smudge it. I'd spill water on it, spill coffee on it. I'd hold it back up and I'd say, who still wants it? And of course, everybody who wanted it in the first place still wanted it then, because they recognized it didn't matter what it looked like. Didn't matter what it had been through. Its value was unchanged. It was undiminished. Now, I'm going to go a step further with human beings. I think our value is enhanced by what we go through. I think we're worth more for the lives we've lived, for the things we've gone through, because it awakens our compassion. It awakens a deeper part of us. It awakens our love and empathy with our fellow human beings. And Jesus wept. If there's one thing that we need, it's more compassion and empathy for our fellow human beings. So that said, I'd love, if you've got questions, to try and take a couple of them. And then if Jeanne's willing to let me take 5 more minutes at the end, I'd like to share one more story.
You got it. Questions?
How about a comment?
Maybe you got one.
The way you ended that with the more we go through, the more it evokes compassion is as powerful for me as you hearing you're not broken. Because that's what sort of, in a sense, gives meaning or lets me let go of my story of what happened to move on to how that was perfect, right on time, and may contribute to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I use an expression a lot. I'm not supposed to get emotional here. I use an expression, the kindness of the design. Now, I want to be really clear. I don't know if there's a design and I don't know if it's kind, but it really looks to me, the way life unfolds, like there's an incredible kindness to the design, and we all get exactly what we need. And it all prepares the way for what's yet to come. So thank you.
Anyone else? Question or comment?
We can just sit in the quiet. That works.
It does work.
And let me speak into the quiet, because at least as it feels over here, it's a kind of a beautiful quiet. It's the kind of quiet that Sid was pointing to continually, right? The answers aren't in better words on the page. They're in the fact of a page and the capacity to write words. They're not in this kind of music versus that kind of music. They're in the space that allows us to hear music as music and not just noise. They're in the space between the notes that makes music music. They're in that space within us through which everything arises and goes out of being. But the space is unchanged. Right? Another metaphor for resilience is a mirror. Right? A mirror can reflect 1,000 things, but it's as good as new on the 1,001st reflection as it was on the first. A mirror can have reflected Hitler for half its life, and Gandhi for half its life, and Mother Teresa for half its life, and you for half its life. It can't really, because I've just given it 3 lives, but bear with me. And it's untouched. It's as good as new. It doesn't matter what's come through our consciousness. Our consciousness is as good as new. Just to lower the metaphor, it's like a nonstick frying pan. Right? It doesn't matter what you've cooked in it. It's nonstick. And if you don't like what you've cooked, throw it out and start again. And you can do that as many times as you want. So the one thing Sid would often say is what everyone is looking for is a silent mind. And to me, he didn't mean no noise, no noise, no noise. God, there's too much noise. I'm making noise by saying no noise, right? He meant that silent mind through which our health, our resilience, our well-being, and whatever this deeper truth about who we are resides. So the words are pretty. I love the words. My thing is words. But I always remember hearing Ram Dass say, if I could sing a song for you, I would sing a song for you. If I could paint a picture, I would paint a picture. If I could dance, I would dance. But my thing is words. And words are dangerous because you might listen to them. And that would be a mistake. Now, for me, what that points to is the space within us in which we can hear the words, through which the words can come. If the words point us back to that space, the space will heal us. It's not the words, it's where they pointed us and our willingness to follow, our willingness to listen, our willingness to look again. So I said I was going to share one last story. I'll go ahead and do that to be respectful of time. So I don't have anything like Jacqueline's experience of prisons and the prison system, but I did go and spend some time in the gang unit of the prisons with Kathy Casey in Northern California. And in the midst of our conversation, now I found this a very frightening thing. It was a new world to me. I'm a middle-class white kid from Shrewsbury, Massachusetts, right? And that was not the world I was entering into. And I brought my son with me because I thought it would be a good experience for him. He was 19. But then when I kind of saw how it was set up and how we, having my son sign a disclaimer that says, if he's taken hostage, they will not negotiate for his release. I was up in my head. I was feeling pretty insecure. I went in assuming I'd be over here, maybe behind a glass wall, and they'd be over there. No, we were all together in the room. They had pens. I've watched Prison Break. You can turn a pen into a shiv and stab somebody, right? I mean, in my head, this was the nightmare scenario. And I willingly brought my son into it. So it was way worse, because if they didn't kill me, my wife would. Well, in the midst of this, I'll go ahead and back this, because this made it even worse. I'd come up as part of the trip, and I'd mentioned to Kathy that I'd come up, that in the evening, we were going to go watch the Giants-Dodgers game, which is like, I don't know what the rivalries are, but take the two teams who hate each other the most, and that's Dodgers-Giants on the West Coast. And so Kathy introduced me that way. Hey, this is Michael, and he's come up here with his son, and they're going to go watch the Dodgers-Giants game. And in my head, I'm going, no, 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 no. Because, of course, the very first thing somebody shouts out is, Dodgers or Giants? Well, I'm at a prison in San Francisco, which is where the Giants are from. So it seemed a pretty safe bet to me that they supported the Giants, but I'd come up from LA, where the Dodgers are from. So it was kind of like being introduced to a gang unit as a member of the rival gang that all of their gangs hated. Now, in that moment, I had a choice. Now, I say I had a choice because I was conscious of it as a choice. I could lie and try and create rapport, or I could tell the truth and establish credibility. And because I was feeling more rubber ball than Christmas ornament, I told the truth. And I said, Dodgers. And they all booed and jeered. But you know what? We were all friends from then on. Because at least we were just a bunch of guys hanging out now. And we talked about innate resilience. And I talked particularly about how we can come back as good as new. And there was a big guy at the back, glaring, looking down at me, which is not that hard, but he was really looking down at me. He was like 6'4", 6'5", and big muscles, and just your image of guy in prison gang unit. And he raised his hand, and I called on him, and he said, "It sounds to me like you're dissing Jesus." And I thought, that can't be good. But I didn't know what he meant, so I asked him, I said, "Well, what do you mean I'm dissing Jesus?" And he said, "Well, you're saying that no matter what somebody's been through, no matter what's happened to them, no matter where they come from, that through just an insight, through just seeing something new, they can come back as good as new, like being born again." He said, and I know that too. I've seen that. It's happened to me. But I know that it can only happen through my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And you're making it sound like a scientific principle. Now, I heard him and I mean, my heart just opened up because I thought, yeah, I don't know why. But what I said to him is, look, I can't tell you whether it's our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, or if it is a scientific principle. I'm not going to plant my flag in either of those because I genuinely don't know. But how cool is it that you and I, who could not have more different lives, who could not have more different backgrounds, can see the same hope and truth and possibility for every human being. And that was it. The room went quiet. He went quiet. I went quiet. My son actually came up to me afterwards and said, "What was that quiet?" And I said, as best I understand, that's what this whole conversation is about. That's our true nature. That's what's always waiting for us, underneath the fear, underneath the thinking, underneath the apparent damage, the apparent brokenness, is home. That's home. And I know that you guys are going to be going home soon. Now, different use of the word home, right? But the home that hopefully you've touched over the last few days, that I know you've touched while we've been talking, that's wherever you happen to be sitting. That comes with you wherever you go. You don't have to worry about, well, will I lose it when I go home? No, because you're already home. You're always already home. And the worst thing that happens is from time to time we forget. We lose sight of it. But you know what's great about forgetting? We get to remember. And every time we remember, it's like we never left home. Like we're as good as new. And in some ways, like we're all the better for having gone through what we've gone through. So I wish I could be there with you guys. I wish I could hang out and answer questions and give hugs and I can't. So thank you. And I hope to see you somewhere down the line in the future.
Thank you.